Welcome to another Blister Speaker Series. We are just going to dive into this because this evening we have with us Angel Collinson. Some of you might know, Angel and I do a monthly podcast that we call Deep Dives with Angel, and that's over on our Blister podcast. And this is actually the first time we've ever, in effect, started a conversation in person. And just a little, behind the scenes part of this, it just went right in into the deep waters of conversations. So there was about 0.7 seconds of small talk, and then we were just in it. And this is kind of how it goes with Angel, and it's one of the things that I really appreciate about her, and one of the reasons why I'm so excited that she is able to join us here this evening. So, Angel, great to see you. Great to have you in the Gunnison Valley.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, we've never met in person before, so it was really great to do the, I think I'm in the right parking lot.
Yeah.
Can you come find me? Give me a hug, squeeze. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to open with was just having Angel actually talk a bit about her education and that part of her backstory. So tell the folks a bit about that.
Yeah. I'm a college dropout.
What, of all the ways you could have opened?
I feel like I needed to open up with that. It's sort of like when you meet somebody's parents and you're like, yes, I'm a massive failure. Do not get your hopes up. No, because I was such a dedicated student, actually, all of my life. I love learning. I love learning about so many things. And, in high school, I was on the high honor roll. I loved it. And, I came in to college and was balancing, skiing and school, and was part of, the honors college program, and was doing a lot. So it was college for me was a really interesting time because, I feel like we work so hard in high school to be prepared for college, right? It's like college is everything. You got to work so hard, and you sacrifice, for a lot of us, your entire life during high school to get good grades, to be on all the sports teams, to do all the stuff. And you get into college and you're like, okay, now I'm supposed to know what I'm going to do with my life. What? I don't know. And, some of us do, some of us don't, some of us change our mind. So I came in with both a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do, and also no idea of what I wanted to do. I came in and I was like, okay, I want to go into environmental law. I want to go to Harvard grad school. I had really good grades. And I also simultaneously was doing the big mountain programs and the big mountain competitions, and immediately was like, wow, I can't do both. And which one do I choose? And so my dad used to joke, she's a college dropout, and I hated it so much when he would say that. And now I can say it with no charge. But it was a really big moment for me to be like, all right, am I going to choose this thing that's so important to me, like skiing? And am I going to give up this other thing that's so important to me, which is my ideals of environmentalism and academics and all these other things. So,
You didn't mention anything about philosophy.
Are you bummed out?
Yeah, a little bummed out. I looked this up. Our first podcast conversation was early 2016. And that was the conversation, unless you were lying to me, that you told me that you were a philosophy.
It's true.
Okay, philosophy student.
Yeah.
So at that point, I declared you my favorite skier. And so I just wanted to make sure we get, some of that in there. But so you mentioned environmental law, but you were also taking some philosophy courses?
Yeah, so, basically with the way that the University of Utah worked, they didn't have an environmental law program. And so you kind of had to choose what you studied. And so when I came in, I kind of did, the like poo-poo platter of like, what am I interested in? Where do I want to go? And I took an intro to philosophy course and freaking hated it. It was the worst class I ever took. And then about halfway through, I was like, oh, actually, this is really cool. Actually, I'm like learning how to think differently. But it took me like, I don't know, 3 months to like understand. And all of a sudden, I was 3 months into this class, Intro to Philosophy, and I was like, whoa, I'm thinking about every single decision that I make in my life in a totally different way. Like, how do I rationalize when I go to the desert with my friends and we're camping? And do we lift a rock up and poop under it and put toilet paper? Like, if I do this, if we all do this, if everyone were to do this, would this work? So I started to think about like all of the ways that I live my life and the ways that I like intellectualize and moralize and make everything okay. And like for me, I was kind of more on the Kantian philosophy where it's like, if everyone were to do the thing that I am doing right now, would society work? Would the planet hold up? Would the environment hold up? And I realized that was so cool to like really understand that there's like all of these systems that people have been thinking about for a long time on how to think about it, but more how to relate to other people in how we think about the way that we interact with ourselves, with other people, with the environment. So I hated the first 3 months of philosophy, and then I was like so sold, and it was like a really fast transition. So yeah, it was philosophy, and then the other part was international relations, which also the same thing, the intro to international relations. I was like, I hadn't really thought about, the importance of why do we think it's important to conceptualize ourselves as countries or nations? Like, why do we feel like we need to place these, geographical boundaries? What does that mean? What does it mean with the resources? Like, and expanding on that, both like philosophically, geographically, the political implications, the historical implications, what that means as we also think about, like the geopolitical forces of, the US as being really innovative, the like Chinese as being like very, very smart, but like mostly following trends. Like that was really cool. So basically I started really studying philosophy and international relations and environmental studies and kind of like took it from there and was really psyched on everything until skiing was like, hey, so North Face wants you to be a global athlete and they want you to go climb and ski Kilimanjaro in September. Can you do that? And I'm like, cool, yeah, that's when my semester starts. I can't. And then I was like, all right, well, what do I do?
So that was literally the kind of trigger, that trip. Do you want to go on this trip? Do you want this opportunity with the North Face? That was the brass tacks moment for you.
Yeah, there was a couple at all at the same time that were very similar to that. Yeah, Smith was like, they needed me to go on a photo shoot in Bariloche. It was all like awesome stuff. Like very, very cool, right? And I was like, ooh, sorry, I can't. I need to go sit in a classroom. And then I'd never, ever, ever considered not going to school because I love school so much. I love learning. And I think in our society, we've paved like college as the way, and not that it's not the way, but it had never crossed my mind to like use college as an adaptive thing that I could also jump back into later in my life. And so when these moments came and I was like, okay, well, no, I can't go to Kilimanjaro. No, I can't go to Bariloche. Like I'm having to say no to a bunch of things that these sponsors are like, all right, cool. Well, we just signed you on the athlete team and you're like supposed to do this stuff. I called my parents and I was like, what if I don't sign up for fall semester? And I was on an academic full ride. So it was like a big deal. But I was like, I'm also making more money from these other opportunities, like more than the academic full ride is worth for the first time in my life. Like I grew up poor as all get out. So like the academic full ride was everything. And so when I started making money from my ski career, I was like, whoa, I can pay for my college actually now. Like I have like a means to pay for my education for the first time ever. And my parents were like, college is always going to be there. And if you really love something, you can always dive back into it. And you will, if you're meant to, like you're going to want to dive back in. You're going to want to learn more. And also like certain life opportunities will go by. They will pass you by. And I was like, all right. So I didn't sign up for a fall semester course. And I feel like this is so sacrilegious to be saying at a Western Colorado University speech. But it was such a pivotal moment in my experience of being like, education is nonlinear. It encompasses all age ranges, like all interests. You know, we think like you have to go to high school, then you have to do this thing, which is college, and then you move on from college and you get a job. But like now I've completed this entire ski career and I'm like, what if I go study music? What if I actually go to like Boulder and I really get into music? And so I'm like looking at going to school again in this completely different realm and aspect. And so I think education is like so beautiful and nonlinear. And I think if we can embrace it with like all of the passion that we feel for it and like follow that and also like not hold it so tightly, it's like a beautiful dance that's tough.
One of the things when talking to college students or graduate students for me is it is an amazing opportunity to be a student. And you talked about that for many of us, certainly in this country, it is a bit like, cool, you're done with elementary school, you're going to middle school, and then you are going to high school, and then you're going to college. And I think a number of students do end up at a university pretty unsure why they're there, not ready to dive into something. And I think that was always the kind of advice I would give. I would frankly rather someone take some time off until they were ready. It's not that you have to know the exact specific course of study, but that you are open and ready to dive into whatever course of study you have the opportunity to embark on, in university life. And I think that is I think that's something you would agree with. If I would say, if that's somebody who is like, I don't know why I'm here and I'm not really optimizing my time, maybe step away. But for anybody else, man, you're here, take advantage of it because you will not be a student your whole life. And I don't know, I think those are some of the really interesting things. I think you are someone who has proven to be a student for life, but I think sharing a bit about the exact moments when you walked away from what you always viewed as kind of an inevitable, academic track, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fast forward. Turns out Angel's real good at skiing. I'm sure you've seen some of her segments, skiing stupid, gnarly stuff, making it look incredible. But then, arguably at the height of your powers, you choose to walk away from a professional ski career. And that announcement happened, we're just about 2 years ago. Talk a little bit about the fact that I think many people would have viewed the life you were living, literally many skiers would have looked at that and said, that's absolutely the dream. She is actually living the dream. And so when you hear that today, what do you think about that notion? You've had a couple years off in a way. What do you think about that? This notion of walking away for what for many people would literally have been a life of which they couldn't imagine something better?
I really love this question. because I think it's a deeply personal quest that we all have, which is, what is it that we really love and that we really want to do for ourselves? And for me, skiing was something that I grew up in and I was really good at. And I realized it was like my ticket out of childhood poverty. It was my ticket like out. And I worked really hard at it. I had a natural talent. I actually thought that when I went to college that I was like done with skiing. And when I found my way back into big mountain skiing, like for fun, and then it became a career, like it was totally accidental. But the theme that I want to speak to around this is the expectations that we feel from society and from our parents around what we should do because we're good at it, because our lives revolve around it, because everyone else would love this thing that we have. And I think a lot of us have something like that in our lives where we might not totally be doing it for us. And so it was really interesting because I like accidentally became a professional skier and I loved it, right? Like, I mean, traveling the world and being like in a lot, like there was no moment of being in the greatness of this career and in this sport that like I didn't appreciate. Like it was amazing. It was so cool, uniquely cool, mind-blowing, like being in glaciers and being with like Seth Morrison and Sage and like watching like the greatest of the great shred lines right in front of you live. Like it was so cool. It was so cool. And also, I didn't want it to be my everything, you know? So all of a sudden, very quickly, it was like my everything and like my entire life had to revolve around it. And like that was cool for a while until I was like, and also like, I want to sail the world. I want to like learn music. I want to do all these other things with my life, but I'm stuck here. And I felt really guilty that I didn't love skiing more. And so for a lot of my career, I actually carried a lot of guilt. I'd be at the Powder Awards. I was winning, I was like winning these awards and like readers poll or, best female segment or best line. And I was like deep in me, I was like, I don't like love this thing in the way that so many people love this thing. And I'm like doing this dream that everyone else wants so badly. I felt really guilty because I was doing this thing that so many people dream of so deeply. And it wasn't like my deepest dream. I felt so bad. And I carried that for a while. And I was like, all right, like how long do you live doing a thing because everyone else thinks it's the coolest thing and it's like the thing for everyone else? Like how long do you do that for, And finally I was like, I'm ready for me. I'm ready for like whatever it is that I want to do. And the problem was I didn't know what that was. And that was the hardest part. But I met my partner, Pete. I'd always had this dream of sailing around the world. Like it came pretty organically that I was like, okay, I kind of see a way out, like buying a sailboat, sailing around the world. But, navigating, exiting skiing and all of my contracts, was a process. But again, what I want to highlight that I think is like this universal concept is when we do these things for other people, it's so deeply personal sometimes why we think we should be doing this thing. Like our parents want this of us. Our grandparents want this thing of us. Our partner wants this thing of us. Like it doesn't matter what it is that we're doing. If we're not totally doing it for us, it's okay to recognize like, I don't really want to be doing this thing. And I actually want to be doing something different. And it's also okay to know or to not know what it is that you really want to be doing. It's okay to feel like, I don't know I don't know what I want to be doing. It's not this thing that I'm doing right now, and I'm going to find it. And so I hope that, as we go on through this conversation, or, my story gives anyone here or anyone listening to this podcast, like, the hope that if you're doing something in your life, or if you're committed to something in your life, not totally for you, that you can find a way to let go what needs to be let go, and jump into something that you don't even know what it is. And trust me, you will find the lily pad and the footing and the next steps, even if they're unclear right now, because that has been, my journey.
Lily pads was the name of an open mic piece. Well, I think we settled on that title.
Yeah.
This has been another thing that's been really cool. In addition to a monthly conversation that Angel and I have, she's also been writing a monthly piece for this series we have called Open Mic. And so it's been a really fun, I know once a month we're gonna have an hour or something long conversation to kind of catch in, talk about some big topics and big ideas, but then to see what you're thinking about, and I never know what you're gonna turn in, ever, on the open mic piece, but anyway, so that has been a really interesting dynamic kind of this last year. Mm-hmm. But I wanna stay on this particular idea of the not knowing what the next thing is, mm-hmm. because I bet a lot of you out there are like, okay, I've probably been at some position in life where whatever it is I'm about or doing, I'm kind of over it or ready to move on. But let's talk a little bit about but I don't know what the next thing is. That takes a lot of nerve. That probably takes some amount of financial resources, or figuring out how you afford life if you give up, if it's a career, and you're just like, well, I'm not into that, so I'm going to nothing. Talk a little bit about some of the things you've done, or strategies or advice to make that an actually viable thing for someone to do, to quit something, to go into the I don't know what phase.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. Even if you're maybe you're looking at completing your college degree and you're like, I don't really want to go right into work or whatever. There's a million what I've learned is that there will never be a period where you don't encounter this thing. This is the thing that you always encounter. You're like, okay, I'm doing this thing and I need to do another thing. And oftentimes, the transition is not seamless. And oftentimes there's this thing that happens where who you are or what you do, whether it's sports or academics or whatever, you are ready to make a change. And the thing about change is that it inevitably means you're doing something different afterwards, something you haven't done before. And that is always so hard and it's so uncomfortable. And I think in society, we don't talk about it a lot. You watch your friends, or you watch somebody on this trajectory, right? They quit their job. They move to a new city. They move into a different home. They get a different job. And you watch them make all of these changes, and on the outside, it seems so easeful. But when you actually know somebody, or when it's actually you doing the thing, it is fraught with questions, and how am I going to make it work? And what do I love? And how am I going to make money now? Is it going to be enough? Can I put enough savings in for kids? There's so much that goes into all of these changes that we make in our life. And especially when we're is this giving my life meaning? Do I love this thing? Is this the thing that I want to be doing? Or am I wasting my time or whatever? Then there's all these philosophical components that come into it. And so I guess what I have learned from my own experience of these transitions is there's no magical answer or super supplement or powder that we can drink or answer or whatever. It's more just the ability to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. You know, it's sort of like when you do your best on the test and you're like, I maybe did great, I maybe failed it. But that moment of being like, it is what it is, I did my best, and it's uncomfortable because I don't know the outcome yet. Like that sort of like liminal space is so potent, I think, for just like seeing life through. And that's what I feel like I've been really practicing as I quit skiing. I'm like, cool. I've been a skier my entire life. It's pretty much the only thing I know how to do well for 30 years. Now I'm going to learn how to sail. I don't know how to sail. I'm going to learn how to cook. I don't know how to cook. Like, doing all these new things and sucking at them, surfing, whatever, like going through customs, not speaking other languages, but just being like, all right, cool. I suck at a lot of stuff. I don't know how to do a lot of stuff, and that's okay. And having the humility of being like, I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay, and I'm going to figure it out, has been such a humbling dance that has like brought this. It's almost like if you're making a stew and you're adding these spices and you're letting them simmer and like the flavor is coming out. It's like this flavor of humility when you sit in discomfort. The way that that flavor will always add to your life is indescribable. And so for me, there's no magic answer to sitting with the unknown or sitting with discomfort, but like the trust that you have in yourself and the humility that comes with each of these things is priceless. Like, and you encounter it time and time and time again.
I want to stick on one, I keep using the word brass tacks, but when you're making a shift like this, you talked about you were doing pretty well as a pro skier in that career. You walked away from that. One other thing that I think it's so, you've talked about growing up, there wasn't a lot of money rolling around. And so I feel like this is almost just baked into your kind of DNA, but I think it's an important thing for maybe a lot of people to hear. One thing is if you're walking away from a job, a career, whatever, and you're leaping to the next, into the unknown, reduce your expenses. And that is a thing that I do think keeps a lot of people stuck in a job or, money counts, I think, in America. And I think one of the things you've shown is a willingness to forego a lot of luxuries, but luxuries that other people would call necessity. Like, I'm not living without that. And it's one of the reasons I always talk about Thoreau's Walden. He opens the whole book with the chapter called Economy. And he's like, if you're a poor student trying to figure out what's worth valuing and what isn't, first thing you can do to buy yourself some time, lower your expenses. And it seems real simple to say out loud, but turns out there's real truth to it. And I think that can really be a thing. Perhaps it's particularly relevant in America or, certain other, European countries. If you're trying to make this leap, how do you actually go about it? You spoke really well to some of sort of the psychology of jumping into the unknown, but then there's the brass tacks financial element of reduce your spending. And that, you agree with this? Or, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's something that you have actively demonstrated on this front.
I think this is a really interesting topic to talk about right now, based on real estate prices and rent prices, and especially in mountain towns where, we can barely keep the workers of the towns affordably housed. So it's this interesting line where life is getting really expensive. And our hobbies are really expensive, and how do we balance it? And it's not so cut and dry as just don't buy that avocado toast, don't go out to the movies. If you do, don't buy popcorn. It's not so simple. I grew up so frugal, right? Like I grew up so poor and so frugal, and there's so many stories I could share about that. It's like if we got 4.0s on our report cards, we go to Taco Bell and get 25-cent tacos. But what I've learned about growing up really poor and really frugal is that I don't want to live that way now, and I don't have to. Like, I actually really love being able to go out to dinner with friends once in a while, and I know I can make that happen. I also can't afford a home right now, and that's okay. So I think that like the conversation around like how do we budget, what's affordable, especially with our hobbies, especially in these mountain communities, like it's very interesting. I can't speak very well to it right now, but what I can say is that really like personally recognizing like how do I want to live, what can I afford, what can I prioritize, and for me personally, I love occasionally nice meals, but I love services. I love spending money on like things that other people do for me that they do really well. Like I love spending money on that. And I don't need to own a lot of items. And so that's how I rationalize it. And so I think the conversation around like how do we live within our means is interesting in these times, and it's very personal, and there's no right way to do it. And like looking at like what do I love? What do I like love spending money on? What's cool? And what can I cut back on? Like I know all of you guys are already doing this all of the time, but just validating like what you all feel as important is important. Like prioritize it. And the things that aren't important, look at that and like give yourselves permission to cut it out. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I feel like in a number of our conversations, we end up talking about purpose and passion. And I want to kind of give you free reign to take those big topics anywhere you like, but I'll just maybe sprinkle this in. You've already talked a bit about in your own life, your passions have shifted, right? And I think for many of us, we can expect that to happen to us. Something think about what you were most passionate about when you were like 11 years old. Probably a little different maybe than what you're thinking about today, or when you were 8 years old, right? Well, for many of us, those things don't stay static in life. And so what are your thoughts about, you can take purpose and passion and how those things come together more generally, or this idea that you are an example of this, these things can change over time. What are you paying attention to decide if that's just a temporary distraction, don't worry about that, stay focused, versus like, oh, here's a bit of the things I'm looking for to be like, this might be time to make a hard pivot.
I feel like most of my life I've been plagued, as probably many of you have, by what is my purpose? Like, why am I here? What's my gift? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be contributing to this world? And for the record, I never felt like skiing was a part of it. I never felt like skiing was my purpose. And I think this question humanity has been asking for a really long time. Like, why am I here? And so I think that purpose and passion, they can coincide. I don't necessarily think that they always do. And I really love this perspective that I heard a few years ago, which came from this old Hindi, like Nepalese woman. Because, as I have mentioned, I studied environmental studies, and I was like, we are stewards of this earth. Like, how are we even going to continue living on this thing? How are we going to have kids if we like screw this all up and don't have fresh water and, yada, yada, yada. And I heard this podcast with this Nepalese woman, and she was like, how egotistical is it of us to think that the earth isn't going to be fine and that everything that we do is in like greater importance than what the earth is doing. Like, why do we think everything that we do is going to serve the earth better than what she can do for herself? And I really thought deeply about that. And what she was saying was, she was in this, as she continued on in her very eloquent speech, which I won't. A lot of times with my friends, I'll like imitate her Hindi accent. I won't do it here. I do love imitating accents, but she was like, what if we were just here to dance? What if we were just here to laugh, to be human, to be ourselves, to enjoy this existence, to maximize every single thing that we could do here, to ski, to bike, to learn, to enjoy lovership. Like, what if all of those things were of the greatest service to the earth? And what if the earth just wanted us to dance on her and to sing and to love and, of course, to be conscious of our contributions and to not do harm? But what if the worst harm we could do was to be fearful of what was happening and to like introduce fear of what we're doing or how to interact with her? Like, what if we just danced? And that really changed me and my thoughts about purpose and passion, because when I think about what I'm really passionate about, it is like those things. It's dancing. It's late nights with my partner, Pete. It's like skiing on powder days. It's like when I hear the really good song that you just can't get enough of and you put it on repeat. Like, those moments of being human are so sacred. And I love that thought of like, what if that is the greatest contribution to the planet and to like being here and to our purpose of being alive? And I think about that a lot. And so when I think about like my passion, it's like, what makes me feel so joyous to dance here now? Like, and it changes. Sometimes it's the perfect bike ride in the fall colors. Sometimes it's the perfect ski run. Sometimes it's that I want a nap. Like, it's ever changing. And when I let go of the concept of like, what is my greater narrative of how I'm going to make a difference here? Like, what if I write a book? What if I create this legacy? What if throughout my, like after my ski career, I create this program for young women? Like, right, I have all of these dreams of things that I want to do with my life and what I've created. And not to say those aren't important and not to say I'm not going to do stuff with that. But there's also this element of what if also the most important thing is to just enjoy it and to spread the pure joy of being here. And everything that I create is just a part of that joy. And that is honestly what feels the most true as I get older and as I navigate these different chapters and as I learn about the oceans and the coral reefs and the tides and like this other world that I didn't even know about, you know, with ocean ecosystems. It's like, there is so much going on this planet that we have no idea about. Like, we are tiny specks. And I really, really do believe that the greatest contribution that we can do is to offer like the most heartfelt joy of dancing here that we can.
Okay. But I also happen to know you are, in fact, writing a book now. You are also about to take a group of people into the desert. That's coming up very shortly. Yeah.
4 days.
4 days. You write these open mic pieces, and many people comment how helpful they find them on a pretty deep level, right? Wrestling with big topics. So I hear you, and I love this notion like, hey, what if the most important thing is that we dance and appreciate this life, find joy in it? But you also are somebody who I feel like you are saying that and mean it, but you are also doing these things, I think, to try to help other people as well. So I'm
Yeah.
don't mean to contradict.
Yeah.
How do you? And I mean, you've already said. So you might say, yes, that's true, but still, let's dance.
So the saying that comes to mind is one of my mentors. She always says, first it's for you, and then it's for the world. And what she means by that is when we do these things in life that we deeply desire, like they're for us. Like, I need to do this thing. I want to do this thing. Like, we're called to do these things, and like maybe it's study philosophy, or maybe it's like learn how to ski this line, or whatever. Like, we're deeply called to do these things for us, right? And following those calls for us are super important. And oftentimes, almost always, what happens when we follow these things for ourselves, when it manifests outward, it also becomes of service to the world. And I would say my life is like an example of that. And so I follow these things, I dance for me. And when I dance, the like ripples and the repercussions of it are meaningful. And I think when we follow these dances for our own selves, it's both purely selfish and it's also completely unselfish. It's both in total service. And I think that like nuanced relationship is something that our society does not do a great job of talking about, of capturing, of explaining. Like, there's a very, very cool interrelationship that I have witnessed and I think is so important. That is what I'm trying to speak to.
I want to open this up now to some of your questions, and I believe we have 2 microphones that we can use to articulate or enunciate your questions. So raise your hand, Kara and Dylan. Kara over here, Dylan over here, if you have questions. And I think we have our first right here.
Hello, all 4'11" of me standing up. I am so curious. We've talked a lot about skiing. What is your relationship to it now? It wasn't your purpose, but when you were talking about that dance with the universe, skiing powder, so you obviously love it. I'm just curious, where are you at now?
That is a great question. I do not know. Well, I haven't skied since I retired. 2021, I kind of like ended my career, set off on the sailboat. And skiing sort of felt like a lifelong lovership for me. It like gave me so many things. It was this very intimate thing that I did, my whole life. And I have no idea what it's going to feel like when I put skis on again. I'm like both excited and I'm terrified. I'm going to put skis on again and I'm not going to be as good at it as I used to be. And that, I just know that, and that sucks. And also, it's probably going to be so liberating that, you identify so much as this one thing, and then to, do it in a different way is probably going to be so cool. But I honestly have no idea what my relationship to skiing is about to be. But, always skiing has been for me a relationship to, explore myself, my own limitations, my own fears, to, look at a 50-foot cliff and be like, I don't want to do it, and then figure out how to do it. And also to look at a 50-foot cliff and be like, I don't want to do it, and be like, cool, I'm not going to do it. This isn't the day. Actually, I never want to do that again, or whatever, right? Skiing for all of us, any sport, anything in life for us, I believe, is always a platform for us to learn about ourselves, to express ourselves, to like get really good at something, or to just like learn more. And that's what skiing was for me. And so I know that like that's what it's going to continue to be, is a way to learn more about myself. And I think the way that it is going to show me that is in ways that I have no idea until I do it again. So thanks for the question.
All right. You kind of touched on this a little bit before already, but what do you think the line is like between personal growth and previous and even like future commitments you may have throughout life?
Can you speak a little more to that?
Should you put commitments you already have in front of like you as a person and how you want to grow, if that makes sense?
I was just talking about this with my friend actually this morning, where it's like that balance that we all have of doing something that we know we need to do or we know is good for us. And then, you know, the other thing, which is like doing something that serves other people. And I just think like that dance never ends. Like it never ends. It's always there. And also, no one else will ever understand our reasons for doing the thing that we do. And something that I've been working a lot on lately for my own personal journey has been, you might not see that from my ski career, but something I do in my personal life is I self-sacrifice a lot for other people. And I was just at Burning Man. I just had this whole experience where I was like, all right, how do I really make my future dreams possible? Like, how do I really do the thing that I want to do for me? And what I realized, like in this flash instant, I was like, I have to start doing less for other people. I always put other people first. And I think that it's pretty common in our society to people please, you know, to fit in with our families and with society. It's really hard to honor ourselves and what we need, especially if it seems selfish, for no reason, for our own pleasure, for our own, like, you know, non-monetary needs or our non-familial needs. It's really hard to be like, I'm going to do this thing for me. So I'm currently just really trying to commit to being like, for my own experience in this own moment, I am really like leaning into studying music. And I just signed up to study music 2 times a week. It's the first time I've like committed to anything of like having to be in one place 2 times a week for 6 months since I was in college. But what it means for me is like having to say no to different engagements or different people or a different family and being like, I have this thing that I need to do. I have this thing that I want to do, and it's important. But what's underneath that all, I think, is our own confidence in ourselves of this is actually valid. It's actually super important that I do this for me. And even if it's for play, even if it's for fun, like we all know what we need. And it's really hard to stand in that, especially when we're in these relationships where people expect us to give a lot or to show up a lot, or there's like codependent dynamics where it's like they need us to like show up in this way that like isn't super healthy, and we all know that. And to stand in the place of being like, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to do this thing for me, is like so hard. So I don't know if this answers like where you're at, but I just encourage you that if you're feeling a call to do something for you purely for your own want, like that is great and so valid and so actually important for you and all of us in our own paths. Like, do it, and it's okay if the other person doesn't understand. They might never. They might like never get it, and that is okay. And it's really hard, but that's okay.
I think it's a really interesting question. And I want to add the element of discipline. Because you brought up the example of like, I really want to go skiing. I really should finish this homework or a project or whatever. And so you use the word like if and when you feel called to do something, but there is also an element to life of discipline that is about doing stuff that you do not want to do. And that's the only way you get great at anything. So how do you think about those kind of competing facts?
I think that's a really great question because, the reason why I got so good at skiing was because like I was incredibly disciplined. Like it was all I did. Like drills, 5 days a week. I was weightlifting 6 days a week in the summer. Like I didn't have anything else. So there was so much discipline. And it was like an immersion, right? That was what like gifted me the skill, was like the consistent honing. And so I believe that discipline is like so important. And I also think that there's an element of choice that's also important. Like as we're in our adult lives, it's like, even for right now, it's like, it sounds so funny. I'm using like music as the example, but it's like, I want to get so fucking good at music and I have no idea where to start. Like I grew up as an athlete and like I have a lot of musical talent, but trying to figure out what to do with it, I feel like I'm just a total noob, and it's like terrifying and it's really humbling. And so to like figure out what discipline looks like versus devotion or commitment is, I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I think it's very like, I don't know, independent, but maybe I'll like toss it over to you and see what you think about it.
One of the things we were talking about kind of backstage was this notion of, let me say it the right way, being 100% yes.
Yeah.
And in that element, maybe it's the sort of thing where, where we are making sacrifices, we're giving up opportunities to pursue something and be incredibly disciplined in it. We probably can check in with ourselves of like, is this still a path that I'm into?
Yeah.
And now, if you're, an elementary student, probably a lot less freedom and choices to make, right? But, the older you get, there might be these opportunities. And so I think, to live a very disciplined life, I think is a virtue in a lot of ways, but check in with yourself, like, is this in fact the trajectory that I am still excited about and passionate about on a broad level? And that brings the clarity and the kind of, I guess, why you're making sacrifices on the daily to get great at a given thing or to serve another person, etc. So that's maybe one answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, everyone in this room is here because they know something that they're passionate about, right? Like, I don't know how many of you live in Gunnison or near Gunnison, but like, you probably live in this area because you love something about what you do here and you're willing to arrange your life around it, So like that feeling of being willing to be like, hey, I am down to like totally rearrange my life to make this thing work. Like that's it. That is it. And like that, there doesn't have to be much more, and you don't have to get rich from it. Like you don't have to, there doesn't have to be this huge aha, like point of existence. Like I think we all understand the profundity of the moments, right, in fall where we're like biking through the trees and the leaves are falling and we're just like, this is so freaking cool. Or when we're skiing, like you are all here because you understand what it's like to design your life around something that is meaningful for you. So I feel like everyone here already understands that. And I don't necessarily think that everyone in the world or even in the US knows that feeling. So I think like the fact that you're here right now is very cool because I think you already know what it's like to choose something in your life at the expense of doing something else or going somewhere else or making more money or doing whatever. Like you're already choosing something because it's really important to you. And I think that is important.
Time for one more question, or I have my own. Did I miss a hand? Oh.
When you walked away from skiing and walking away from like companies that you had like some stability there, how do you maintain like good relationships with people doing that, but also keep yourself strong mentally? I'm looking at walking away from a job that I've been working at for 6 or 7 years, and I just want to know how to balance that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think so much of it comes from our solidity in ourselves. I was so terrified to tell, like, for example, I was in the middle of a 3-year contract with North Face, and I was like, I got to bounce early. And they can technically take away all of the funds that they've paid you in those entire 3 years. I didn't necessarily think they were going to do that, but that was a possibility. I was like, ooh, I could look at losing a lot of money that I can't lose right now. So I think what it came down to for me that was really terrifying was being like, how much do I believe in this thing that I want to go towards? How much do I believe in myself and who I am? And I think sometimes in life we feel really seen by the people that we're surrounded by, the people that we're working with, by our fellow like colleagues or students. Sometimes we feel really seen and it feels great. And if you feel that, I encourage you to lean into it and to like draw on that, to be like, I know people see me in this way. I know I bring this value. I know that like, even though I'm leaving this thing, people know me as being hardworking, dedicated, or whatever, like whatever those qualities are. For me, I was like, I feel that when I leave skiing, people will see me for more than being just a skier. Like they'll see me for where I want to go and they'll want that for me, you know? And so I was so terrified to tell everyone that I was leaving skiing. It was, I mean, I like put it off for like 6 months. And when I finally had all the conversations with my sponsors of being like, all right, so I'm like not going to ski anymore. All of my sponsors and all of my athlete managers, they were like, and I also know it was because of the way that I brought it to them. And I was like, because when I brought it to them, I was like, all right, guys, here's the shtick. I'm not going to ski anymore. And I am so excited about it because here is what I'm excited about. I'm sailing around the world with my partner. I'm doing all these cool life things I've always wanted to do. I feel really great about it. I'm psyched. I'm really sad I'm not going to ski. I'm really sad I'm not going to work with you anymore. And also, I'm so excited about life. And when I brought it in that way, all of my sponsors were like, oh my God, I am so excited for you to do this life adventure. That is so cool. I wish I could do that. All of my athlete managers were like, damn, can you take me with you? And I was like, yeah, no. But I think if you like bring any of your situations in that way where you're like, hey, I'm not doing this thing anymore because I'm so excited about this possibility. And you really stand for the possibility of the life that you're creating for yourself. It invites the other people an opportunity to be excited for you for that. And it also shows them what else is possible because maybe they don't want to be doing the thing they want to do, you know, like we're all sometimes stuck in the thing. And when we make these changes that are really hard and we disrupt the systems that are really hard, but we do it in like a positive and inspiring way, and we stand for the joy that is possible, the change that is possible, like the life that we're creating, it invites other people into the excitement. Did that answer your question good enough? Okay. Yeah.
Well, Angel, once again, another good conversation, and thank you all for the great questions tonight. Another great speaker series, I think. I really appreciated just thinking through the folks that we've had from different walks to share their experiences. It's been really cool, and once again, another good conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights, and we'll do this again real soon, Angel.
Thanks. I always just really appreciate your gift of like bringing so much of all of ourselves and the athletes and our stories out. It's a rare platform that we get to share all of this. So thank you.
Thank all of you.